Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're doing a video on Enneagram Type 8 called the Challenger. Their animal is the bull, and I'm excited about this video, and I hope it's helpful to you guys. If you're an 8, you may not even be watching this, because what do you need my opinion for? You already know who you are, and what can I tell you? That's a joke, because 8s tend to be very independent. They tend to be very strong-willed, very strong-minded, and not necessarily swayed by other people's opinion. And 8s have a tendency to want to resist, or you could say the need to be against. And that's an interesting thing, that if you could just understand that one fact about yourself, or if you are in a relationship with an 8, if you have a child that's an 8 or a spouse that's an 8, just let that roll around in your mind for a while if you've never heard that before, the need to be against. You say, against what? Well, whatever everybody else thinks, or whatever everybody else, is for. And it's not in a sense like I've got to be different, like a 4. It's in a sense of like, well, let's test this idea. Let's test how much you believe in this idea. Let's test how committed you are to your opinion. And 8s will connect with you by bantering with you, by challenging you, by what seems like debate or arguing with you. And that's how they show that they're close to you, is that they feel close enough to you. Think of it like this. They feel close enough to you that they're willing to argue about things with you. Because you don't just go up to a person on the street and pick an argument. You don't just go up to the salesperson at the grocery store and say, let's talk about politics, or let's talk about, vaccinations, or whatever it is, whatever the topic is. So when 8s are bantering with you, it may not be that they're angry. It may be that they're just enjoying this, like this give and take, this think of it like a ping pong ball, so they're playing with you. They don't think of it as playing. I don't mean that they're being playful. I just mean this is something they enjoy doing. They like testing their own beliefs, testing your beliefs, challenging you. I mean, after all, they're called the Challenger, right? And they can be challenging people to some types, or if you're not aware of what makes them tick or what makes them think, you might feel like they're coming across aggressive or antagonistic. But I don't think 8s often intend on coming across antagonistic or aggressive. I think they're just being themselves. They're very assertive. And so they walk into a room, they expect something's going to happen. They expect that I'm here now, so what do you want me to do? And 8s are in that doing triad, that gut triad. They want to know what it is they're supposed to do. They don't want to sit around and think about it a lot. They don't want to sit around and feel things about it and tap into what they feel. They just know if there's an issue, if there's a situation, then let's act. Let's do something. Let's quit talking about it. Let's show up and let's make something happen. So 8s act first, and then they think about their actions. They think about, well, maybe I should have slowed down a little bit and included somebody else in my decision. Or maybe I should have thought about, what would result from this action. They act first. It's like life is coming at them. Okay, I don't mean this in the wrong way, but in 8s, 9s, and 1s, it's kind of like, I feel like, now I'm a 7, I have a wing 8, and it's a small wing. My main wing is my 6. But in my opinion, 8s, 9s, and 1s, it's kind of like they all three operate with this mindset that like people are stupid. Now, if you're an 8, 9, and a 1, maybe you're offended by that. You say, I don't think that. I know you're against me. Because you're an 8. Okay, but listen, just hear me out. 8s, 9s, and 1s, it's like people are stupid. So what does the 1 do? The 1 says people are stupid, so they have to be managed. They have to be organized. They have to be told what to do. They need to be given a list of how they should behave and how they ought to behave. Why? Because people won't do the right thing. People are foolish. People are stupid. People are foolish. And so they got to be organized, and they got to be managed, and they got to have laws, and they have to have police officers, and that's all one thinking, okay? 9s kind of like evade it. What they do is they say, people are stupid, so don't depend on them. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to pay attention to you. And they're going to talk over you. And so if I just ignore them and let myself be ignored by them, then they won't hurt me, they won't bother me, and I won't have to be bothered by them. Because that's what 9s are all about, is they don't want people coming in and pushing on them and moving them to action. So they just kind of like go along with people to keep people from pushing on them, and it can come across like stubbornness. Essentially what they're saying is people are stupid, and I've got to do what it takes to get along with them. Okay, now 8s, what they do is it's kind of like they're thinking people are stupid, so you got to punch them back. You got to keep them out of your yard. You got to keep them out of your business. You got to keep them on the defensive. Keep them away, because if you let them get into your life, they're going to screw it up. They're going to mess it up. They're going to push on you. They're going to over talk you. They're going to try to run some kind of shenanigan to get the best of you. They're going to try to get into your bank account. They're going to try to pull one over on you, sell you something you don't need. And so you've got to resist them. And so there's that need to be against. Why are you against people and what they want? Because people are out to get you. People are stupid. People can't be trusted. People are foolish. And so like a 1 wants to like clean it up and sort it out. The 8 just wants to be left alone. The 8's not looking for a fight. They're not going to back down from a fight. They're probably not going to start a fight. They're not looking for a fight. They just want to keep you on your lane, keep you on your side of the road. And if you'll stay out of my business, then we won't have a fight. Okay, I think that's pretty much the way the 8 operates. All right, so they value independence. They value the people. Now think like this too, a fort. 8s all have like a castle wall or a fort mentality. All right, so outside the fort are other settlers that, as long as they don't bother my fort, I don't need to know who they are. I don't care who they are. They're like faceless robots. They're like nameless drones. They're just people out there. They're settlers out there in the fort, outside the fort. And if they don't come knocking on my door, I don't know they exist, and I don't care that they exist. Also outside the fort are what? Hostiles. All right, there's hostiles outside the fort that are potential threats. And so that's why we have a fort. We have a fort to keep the hostiles outside so that we stay safe. All right? So there's lots of people out there that don't matter, and then there's others out there that are dangerous or are threats. And the 8 is always, sort of like evaluating who's in charge, who's a potential threat, where are the exits, because they want to identify those threats so that they can protect themselves. So they build this fort around themselves. Now watch this. There's also people on the inside of the fort. All right, so you got a fort, that's to keep people out, but it's also to keep the right people in. So 8s always have a group of people that are their insiders. The people inside the castle walls. And this is who the 8 cares about. Okay, this is probably their family, their kids, people they've known for a long time in life, people that they've developed trust with, people they can be honest with, people that are honest with them. They are probably a small number of people that are inside the fort. And if you're on the inside of the fort, the 8 will die to protect you. They will die, and they will die to themselves and their own desires and needs, because you are an insider. You're somebody that they value. So when you are loved by an 8, you're experiencing something great. But if you're on the outside, the 8 probably isn't even aware you exist unless you have identified yourself as a threat to them. 8s are kind of like, somebody said, like the toasty marshmallow, okay? Or the crusty burnt marshmallow is probably a lot more 8s, because there's a lot of unhealthy types, And just like every other type, there's a lot of unhealthy 8s. So an 8 is kind of like a toasty marshmallow in that the outside is kind of burnt, it's kind of crusty, kind of crisp. And you might look at it and think, well, why would anybody want to mess with that? Every time I'm around them, they're belligerent, they're harsh, they're critical, they're straight, direct, to the point. They don't necessarily come in and do all the niceties that everybody does. They may, but chances are they don't. And so they're not big on trying to be likable, okay? They don't need you to like them. They need you to leave them alone, okay? They need you to stay out of their business. So on the outside, they may come across like crispy and burnt, but on the inside, what? It's gooey, soft, and sweet, right? And so the people that know the 8s from inside the fort may think of them far differently than the people on the outside of the fort. Okay. All right, so the operating system of an 8 is life is tough. Only the strong survive. And there's a lot of truth to that. Life is tough. Life is harsh. There are evil people out there in the world. There are people that want to deceive you. There are people that want to get the better of you. There are people that will call you with all kinds of tricks to try to get into your bank account. And we all know that those people exist, that are always trying to get something over on you. And so the response that makes sense to 8s is you've got to be tough. You can't just believe everybody. You can't just trust everybody. You can't be naive. You got to be strong. And if you're strong, then you'll be able to handle these potential threats. And the way that the 8 will try to help you is to help initiate and embolden that courage within you. They will come alongside you and they will challenge you to be more courageous yourself. And by doing that, they feel like they're helping you, which sometimes can be frustrating to those of you who might go to an 8 for help, because this is kind of the way the scenario unfolds. Let's say that you go to a restaurant and you order something and it comes out and it's not exactly the way you ordered it. So, the gravy's on the side instead of on top of the potatoes or whatever the issue is. And you're at dinner with an 8 and you say, oh my, they got this wrong. I asked for them to put the gravy on the side. And you're tempted to be like, because you're probably an agreeable type, and you're like, well, it's no big deal. It's okay. I mean, what, after all. And you start making excuses. Here's what the 8 will say to you. You need to tell that waitress to take this back and make it right. And that's kind of their way of helping you. They may not realize that they just got involved in your business. In other words, they stepped into your fort. Okay, that's what they don't want done to them. They don't want people coming up to them and telling them what to do. So this is kind of the shenanigan of 8s, is they step over your boundary all the time and tell you what you need to do, but they themselves would respond very negatively if somebody did that to them. And they often don't see that in themselves. So the way they're going to help you is tell you that you need to be more courageous. You need to find your voice. You need to tell that waitress to get this right or you're not paying for it. And so they're trying to summon up courage in you. And if you won't do it, then they might be compelled to do it themselves. Never mind, I'll tell her for you. Or they might go the other way. Well, if it ain't a big enough deal for you to get involved in fixing it, then I'm not going to fix it for you. In other words, if you're too incompetent to figure this out on your own and you're willing to just take whatever somebody throws down in front of you, then I guess that's the way you want it. And so you can see that this problem, this issue of getting the wrong food served to you, it turns into a fight. And if you're, one of these types like a 9 or a 2 or a 6, you want to be compliant, or a 1, maybe even a 1 sometimes. You might want to be compliant and you're want to minimize it, or a 7, you want to reframe it. And then you got this person next to you who's an 8 saying, no, you need to take action. You need to, fight for your meal the way you ordered it. you can find yourself like maybe being uncomfortable in that situation. And then the 8, they just think they're helping you. They're helping you. Okay. So I think that sometimes happens. And 8s don't necessarily don't perceive it. They perceive it as being helpful. You might perceive it as being, intrusive. Okay. They are strong-willed people of action. They are very much what you see is what you get. They're assertive, but they're not assertive like a 3. A 3 is always kind of like thinking about how they can position themselves to move up the ladder. 8s will move up the ladder, but it's not necessarily intentionally. They move up the ladder because they're just taking action and doing what they think needs to be done. And everybody else won't step up, so I'm going to step up and I'm going to make this happen. If you want to follow me, let's go. I don't care if you follow me or not. I've got to act on what I think is right at the time. And so since they move to the front of the line first, they often become leaders by default. They may not really want to be leaders. Where I think like a 3 wants to be a leader often. They're thinking about how to get up in front to lead people and to be a model and an example. 8s are just willing to take action, and because they take action, it moves them forward, and the rest of us kind of file in behind them and say, well, it looks like they know what they're doing. It looks like they're confident, so I guess I'll follow them. And so often I think 8s are kind of like moved to leadership by others or advanced by others because they're willing to take action, where 3s are more like trying to figure out how to get to the position of leadership, to the position of authority, or to the position of management. So 8s, I think, aren't thinking about how they're coming across, how they're being perceived, whether or not people are going to advance them. They're just acting. I think they're just taking action because it needs in their mind to be taken. They are justice warriors. Where 1s are very concerned with things being fair, and they want to prescribe that fairness, through laws. And if everybody would do the right thing, we'd all have a more just society. I don't think 8s want to prescribe their sense of fairness so much as they want to get even with people that they think have been unjust. So I think of 1s as kind of like the patrol officer, kind of like the police officer that wears the badge and identifies themselves to the community as, I'm here to maintain law and order. If you see me, you shouldn't speed in front of me because I will enforce the law on you. I think that's like a 1, okay? They want to see people follow the rules so that society will be safe and fair. If everybody would just do what they're supposed to do. So 1s are very should and ought oriented. And they want to prescribe that on you. They think you ought to follow those rules too. And they're very frustrated when you don't. Remember, they're an anger type, okay? And their sin is anger. 8s are kind of more like that detective. I don't mean like a 5 detective that's like searching all the evidence, like the forensics detective. The 8 is more like that detective with the scruffy beard. It's unshaved. Their clothes are kind of rumpled and crumpled, right? And they may not identify themselves, obviously, that they're a detective, but they want to get the criminal or the suspect alone in the room for 5 minutes, and they will get the truth out of them one way or the other. Where the 1 wants to follow all the protocol and says, well, I can't break the rules in trying to break this criminal. The 8 is like, shut off the cameras, don't record this, put me in the room for 5 minutes with them, and I will get to the truth one way or the other. And so they are kind of like the vigilante of justice. They don't like it when people are taken advantage of. They don't like it when people are manipulated. They don't like it when people are mistreated. And they want to see justice enacted on those that violate protocol, violate the rules. But in doing so, what happens, is the 8 might violate protocol in enacting that justice. That's something that, again, they may not see in themselves, that they also are accountable to the law like everybody else. They are classic heroes, and their superpower is superpower. That's their superpower. Their superpower is like invincibility. like the Hulk. They just are strong and powerful. And what's amazing is they can be even little tiny people. It can be a little tiny girl, who's an 8. I'll give you an example. Annie on Little Orphan Annie is an 8. All right, think about her. What's her posture in that movie? Is she doesn't want to be a problem. She doesn't want to cause problems. But if you start messing with the dog, right, Sandy, then Annie will show up with both fists and she will back you away. If you start picking on the little girl, there's another little, like, toddler girl in that play that is sad and, doesn't have any parents. And if you start picking on that little girl, what does Annie do? She shows up with both fists, right? And so you can be small and be like a small 8, but you will seem bigger than you actually are. More impressive, more powerful, because you are an 8. Okay, so 8s don't want to be dependent on others. I said before in one of the other videos that if, think about getting rich. A 7 wants to get rich because of all the opportunities it brings them. A 3 might want to get rich because of all the status that goes along with it, the labels and the status and all that. Well, the 8 wants to get rich because now they don't need to work for you. They don't need to depend on you. It brings them a sense of independence in that I don't have to ask anybody for anything. Hardest thing for an 8 to do is to come and say, I need help. To be vulnerable. That's hard for an 8, to be vulnerable. To recognize weakness in themselves or dependence in themselves. Just hearing that makes them feel sick. It makes them shudder. They want to be strong, independent, and money is one way to be independent. And 8s often, might be good at making money because they're action oriented, and action brings results. And if they get wealth, it makes them feel secure. It just, pads up those castle walls, those fort walls, so that they don't depend on others, and they feel more independent. They're willing to take risks. They're assertive and forceful. And here's something else that you need to understand about 8s. I said, that need to be against can be a very helpful way of summarizing an 8. Here's another very helpful way. 8s want to control their environment. Let that sink in for a minute and just think about it. An 8 in your life, maybe it's a child or a parent or a husband, spouse. They want to control their environment. Again, fort mentality, right? So when you're in a fort, you're there because you can control that environment. Everything outside the fort you can't control. But what can you control? What's inside the fort? 8s want to be able to control their environment. Let me give you an example. The calendar. The calendar is an environment. It's how you're going to prioritize your time. It's where you're going to spend your time. You want to upset an 8? Put something on their calendar without asking them. Okay? Like, agree that we're going to go to somebody's party at their home and sign your 8 spouse up for that event and put it on the calendar. And this is probably what will happen. You'll come back, 2 days later, and you'll say, oh, by the way, I told Marty that you and I would be at this office party that's going to be hosted on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock at his house. Tell the 8 that and watch how they respond. You took control over their environment, their calendar, and now you're informing them that you've done that. And their immediate response, now they may not show it because maybe they've worked through some healing and, they've learned to be present to life and all these things we talk about. But their initial response is one of frustration and anger. You did what? You said I would come to that event. You agreed that I would be there. And it's that sense of what gives you the right to say that you can control my schedule. Another example. Suppose everybody's in a group and we're all hungry and we're talking about lunch and somebody says, let's all go get pizza. And everybody kind of agrees, okay, all right, well, that's cool, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you what the 8's thinking, all right, when they hear that. They may not act on it. They may not say anything. It might happen in a flash, and then they let it go and they agree to it. But this is what they're thinking. Who are you to tell me what I'm going to eat? What gives you the right to decide for the rest of this group that we're going to eat pizza today? Now, they may love pizza, but you see, that need to be against and control their environment. You are deciding for everybody else. You're going to decide what goes in my stomach. Why can't we go to the taco restaurant? Why can't we go to the fish restaurant? Why can't we go to why do you get to pick what restaurant we go to? What gives you the right to think you can mandate a decision on everybody else and you get to decide what I'm going to eat? See, they want to control their environment. And there's 1,000 other ways this probably shows up in the life of an 8. It's something that's helpful for you to understand about yourself or about the person you love, is there's this immediate resistance or challenge to anything they feel like is manipulating their environment or controlling their environment. They don't want your leaves to blow into their yard. Get your leaves out of my yard. I don't care what you do with them, just don't come blow them in my yard. All right? So they want to control their environment. They're not going to go down the road and make sure everybody's leaves are in the right spot. But the leaves blow in my yard, then we're going to have a conflict. We're going to have a problem. Okay? So the 8s kind of just want to be left alone in that sense. All right. They don't seek to control your environment. So now they don't think they do. They may actually, without realizing it, kind of get in your business a little too much. But the way they're thinking is, I don't try to go around telling everybody else what to do and controlling their environment, so they better the heck not try to tell me what to do. And they can sometimes use more force and energy in this struggle than is necessary and exhaust and deplete themselves over things that may not even have happened. But in their mind, they're preparing for a fight that may not ever even come. Okay, they can exhaust themselves. They may not see people as equals. They can kind of feel like they're above the law and maybe above the faceless, nameless robots, that are out there. And they kind of have that idea like you're either with me or against me, or you're irrelevant to me. Not I'm better than you, but it's more like I don't notice you. Unless you are a problem, they probably won't notice you. They can come across as bossy, to other people. They have a real problem with anybody that they feel like is betraying them. This is huge for 8s. They will maybe interpret people's actions as betrayal. For example, let's say they share something private with you, something that makes them vulnerable, which is hard for them to share, a fear, that they have or something. And if you go around behind their back and you tell other people or manipulate that situation in some way, they will feel like you betrayed them. And there's probably nothing worse to an 8 than that sense that this person has betrayed my trust. They were an insider in the fort, and they have now identified themselves as a hostile. And the 8 is going to have a big problem with anybody they feel like is betraying them in any way. I'm going to talk about this hopefully more at the end of this video, but something else just to bring up at this point, another big concept if you haven't thought of this, is 8s tend to translate their feelings into anger. Now, anger is a very powerful motivator. You can get a lot done when you're jazzed up on anger. I mean, think if I said go clean the house, turn some happy music on, and think happy thoughts, then you're going to be humming to yourself doing this cleaning, But if I said wait till you're angry and just frustrated and mad, now here's all the cleaning supplies, go, you might work twice as fast and you'll put some energy into that, because after all, that anger drives you and energizes you. Well, 8s kind of translate their feelings of sadness and hurt and disappointment and all those things that may feel like weakness. You know, if you feel sad or you feel disappointed or you feel insignificant or you feel violated, any of these things that make you feel weak, those often get translated, I think, in the 8's feeling network into just anger. Just who's to blame for this? And that anger becomes a fuel for energy, which moves them to what? Action, which is where they go first, action. And energy, that anger energizes them into action. But the danger in doing that is sometimes you need to sit with sadness or sit with disappointment or sit with feelings of insignificance. That there are healthy lessons to be learned when you acknowledge truth. And that's what the 8 is all about, is a search for truth. They just want the truth. They want to share the truth. They want you to be truthful with them, but they may not be true to what they're really feeling because it doesn't feel powerful to feel weak. It doesn't feel powerful to feel sad. And so one of the shenanigans I think that 8s run on themselves is in their quest for truth, which is what they are all about, is the truth, is they may not be true to their own feelings because they don't want to feel weak and powerless. And just listen to this, maybe more than some 8s are able to even think about. So I think that we could be a little more compassionate with 8s if we realize that they kind of translate these feelings into anger. And so when they're coming at you, maybe with both fists flying, you know, they're coming at you with this angry, you know, approach, that they may not really be dealing with anger. They may be dealing with sadness or with insignificance or disappointment or some other that they're kind of translating into anger and looks like anger. 8s do want the truth. They just, in their mind, they just want to get to the truth, tell you the truth, and they don't like being lied to. Again, that's a form of betrayal. They will be investigators in the sense of like trying to get to the truth, because they feel like if everybody was just honest with each other, then life would be a lot simpler. It's so easy if everybody would just tell the truth, no matter how hard it is to hear it, and be man enough to listen to the truth. Then people could act on truth. But when you act on lies, then you get all kinds of trouble, you know? And so if people would just be honest and truthful with each other, then, you know, everybody could be a lot more better related to life. So truth is an extremely important value to 8s. They kind of have that mindset like I mentioned the Hulk, like, you know, David Banner or Bruce Banner, whatever his name is. You don't want to see me when I'm angry. You know, so they kind of warn you ahead of time, you know, like you don't want to see me when I'm angry. Okay, so when they're very unhealthy, they can kind of end up like adopting an outlaw mentality. And they're capable of violence. I guess all of us are, you know, but an 8 is very capable of violence if they feel like justice isn't going to be served any other way. They could become criminals and renegades and con artists and heartless and ruthless, immoral, and living without conscience if they're very unhealthy. So there's that potential there, I think, within them, as it is within all of us. But I think an 8 could be maybe perceiving themselves as being the hero, and then wonder kind of like how they ended up in prison, you know, because in their mind, it was kind of like they were the equalizer. You know, you remember those movies, Equalizer and Death Wish, where, you know, what's his name in the Equalizer, Denzel Washington, who is an 8, you know, when a perfect role for him is somebody, you know, hurt his family. So what does he do? The law didn't get him, so he goes after him like a vigilante and kills them one by one. All right, that's a very 8 way of thinking. Is justice is going to be served one way or the other, and they can find themselves, you know, in opposition to the law. So let's talk about some examples of people in culture that are 8s. One of my favorite examples is on King of Queens is Carrie Heffernan, Doug's wife. Doug's a 9. He just wants his sandwich. He just wants to drive his truck. He just wants to watch football. Carrie is an 8, probably an 8-7. She tries to be kind and friendly, but then what happens? She snaps, and she's got to be direct and straightforward because people are stupid and they're not listening. Also on that show, Deacon is an 8. I think he's an 8-9, but he's an 8 too. On Everybody Loves Raymond, Grandpa Frank Barone is an 8. Mad Eye on Harry Potter is an 8. Ross Poldark, if you watch Poldark on PBS, he's very much an 8. A great example of the good and bad, the strengths and weaknesses of an 8. Daryl on The Office is an 8. Martin Luther King Jr., Theodore Roosevelt, John Wayne, Charles Bronson. I just mentioned Death Wish. Charles Bronson's an 8. Sean Connery, Queen Latifah, Donald Trump is an 8. Johnny Cash, Frank Sinatra. Most of those band singers are all 9s, but Frank Sinatra is an 8. Roseanne Barr is an 8. Here's a great example of an 8, okay? Medea. Medea is an 8. All right, so get the spirit of Medea, the energy of Medea, and you understand what an 8 is, right? Because 8s, when they're healthy, we'll talk about this in a second, when they're integrated, they look like a 2. They look, very compassionate and loving to the people on the inside of the fort. They're very grandmotherly, but then mess with them, right? And you get Medea, all right? So Medea is a good example of an 8. Danny DeVito is an 8. Sean Hannity is an 8. Dr. Phil is an 8. And think how direct, if you're a Dr. Phil fan, he's compassionate and caring when he's in that 2. He's caring about you. He's spending time with you, but he's not going to lie to you. He's going to shoot you straight. He's going to look you in the eyes and challenge you, right? And that's his way of helping you, is to challenge you, is to tell you the truth and challenge you. Dr. Phil. I already mentioned Annie, but here's something else to think about. The culture of the Mafia is 8 culture. The culture of the Mafia. The insiders, we take care of the family, right? Everybody else is either a hostile threat or nameless robots. And who does the Mafia come after? They come after other members of the Mafia that betray the family. If you betray the family, then you have just identified yourself, and you are marked. You are a marked man because you have betrayed the family. The worst punishment will be handed out to those who were on the inside that are seen as betrayers. All right, so we take care of the family. Everybody else is just consumers of our products, and we will step on those that need to be stepped on, and they will destroy those that betray them. All right, so 8s want to cut through all the charades. I think in their mind, what they're just thinking is, cut the garbage. Just cut all the baloney and tell me straight. Don't give me some story. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Don't try to sell me your nonsense. Just be honest, direct, cut through the garbage, and tell me the truth. And who's really in charge of this? Who will know the 8. The 8 will either be in charge of it, or they will know who's really in charge of it. Because that's what's important to them, is they want to know where the potential threat is, and they want to know what the power structure is. And they want to know, this person that's talking to me, do I really have to listen to them? I know that they have the title. I know that they have the position. I know that they have the plaque on their wall. But are they really in charge? The 8's going to test. See, again, the 8 doesn't want to be tested themselves. See the shenanigan? They don't want their boundaries tested, but they will test the boundaries, and they will test the resolve of the person in charge to see if that person will really stand up for themselves. Okay. All right, so they have like a fearless exterior, but then the toasty marshmallow on the inside. And you'll see this soft, compassionate side of them when they are around what they perceive to be the defenseless. When they're around old people, disabled people, toddlers and infants. You'll see that soft side of the 8 because they can let the fort walls down. They know this toddler is not a threat to them. They know this disabled person is not a threat to them. And so you'll often see the softer side of an 8 with pets, with infants, and this person that was big, burly, strong, a bear, when you see them around somebody who's defenseless, you'll see the walls come down and you might get a glimpse of that gooey marshmallow inside. Okay, so let's see here. It's helpful for 8s to remember that not every interaction needs a fighter. The root sin of the 8 is what? Is lust. Lust. Now, you might translate that word a little bit into intensity. I think lust is appropriate in the sense of lust uses people rather than values people. Lust sees people as commodities that could be used, manipulated, or taken advantage of. And in that sense, sometimes 8s can kind of look at people as commodities. But I think this idea of intensity is a little bit more spot on. Where 7s, like myself, are going to want to sample life's banquet. 8s know what they want, they know what they like, and they want a lot of it. And let me give you an example. As a 7, if I were to go on a diet, my biggest concern would be, well, which diet am I going to go on? I want to find out all the diets. I want to get all the information. Like a 5, I want to get all the information. And then I'm going to pick one. I'm going to get real enthusiastic about it. And then at some point I'm going to wonder, is this really the best diet? Maybe I'm missing something. 7's missing out, right? Maybe I'm missing something by not being on the South Beach diet. So I really ought to find out what that is. Well, maybe I'm missing something by not knowing what the blood type diet is. Well, maybe I'm missing something not knowing what the keto diet is. And so a 7's always going to be, trying to figure out from all that's out there, which one is the one they want, which one's the best. The 8, if they're going to go on a diet, it's going to be intense. It's going to be like, I'm only eating oatmeal. I'm on an oatmeal diet. I'm on a popcorn diet. I'm on a baked potato diet. That's all I'm eating. How long are you going to be on this diet? The rest of my life. It's intense. I'm going to lose 100 pounds. And I'm only going to eat potatoes until I lose 100 pounds. And it's just this intensity that everything they do is with this like relentless drive and determination and resolve. And a 7 might walk into a candy store and think, I want to try a sample of everything. And 8's like, no, I like chocolate turtles. Give me 2 boxes of chocolate turtles and I'm going to eat them all right now. Intense, right? I know what I like. I made my decision and I want a lot of it. And I want to feel it. I want it to be intense. So the sin of the 7 is lust or intensity. If they're going to exercise, then they might over-exercise. If they're going to go on vacation, then they're going to do it with intensity. Okay, so let's see. 8s often feel like they had to grow up too soon. Like they needed to grow up and become the strong one in the family. Which is kind of funny, because if you have a 7 wing, if you're an 8, you have a 7 wing, whether it's developed or not. Think about what the 7 is, right? I don't mean to keep talking about 7 so much, but I think it's pertinent. The 7 is the type that doesn't want to grow up. Okay, so think about that. The 7, the Peter Pan, who refuses to grow up, is right next to the 8, who feels like they grew up too soon. Do you see how leaning on our wings can be extremely helpful to us? Because if you're an 8 and you feel like you had to grow up too soon, can you get in touch with a little bit that part of you, that wing in you, that can let yourself be a kid again? Can let yourself be a child? Child is what? Vulnerable. But look at your wing. Your wing right next to you is the wing of a 7, which doesn't want to grow up. The basic fear of the 8 is the fear of being controlled, or the fear of being manipulated, or the fear of being taken advantage of, or the fear of being victimized in some way. The basic fear is somebody stepping into your fort and taking over. The basic desire of the 8 is to protect themselves from threats and to protect their own independence. All right, so unhealthy eights seek to be too autonomous. In other words, they want to separate themselves too far away from people. And this is really how 8s get lost. They get lost in fighting fights that aren't there. What you need to remember as an 8 is not everybody is trying to manipulate you. There are people who are just trying to be friends with you, or who are just trying to love you, or who are just trying to relate to you. Not everybody's trying to sell you a lemon used car. And so you can get lost by avoiding relationships with people because they may not matter to you. But they might matter to you if you invested time and energy in those people. Not everybody is a potential threat to you. Not everybody wants to pull one over on you. In fact, I would argue that most people don't. Most people just want to get along with you. And they see strength in you that they need in themselves. And if you can accept that most people are not trying to get the best of you, you might find your defense mechanisms could relax a little bit, and you could be more present to life, more present in your workplace, more present in your family, more present in your neighborhood. If you're not afraid that the worst, is going to happen to you. Let's see what else. Okay, so the 8-wing 7. The 8-wing 7 is called the independent, or sometimes called the nonconformist. 8-7s are probably a little bit more personable, a little more charismatic, a little bit more fun-loving. Under stress, they might be a little more tempted to kind of like be winsome or charming, like a 7 would be. Funny, engaging, pleasant. They kind of have a wheeler and dealer sort of approach or nature about them. They can be very pragmatic and practical and competitive, not overly concerned with pleasing others, like maybe a 7 would be a little bit more. But they're good at challenging others and relating to others. Now the 8-wing 9 is called the bear. And think about it, a bear wants to be left alone. And a bear, when you leave them alone, is relatively harmless. But what happens when you go into a bear's cave? Or you present yourself as a threat to the bear's children? Well, the mama bear is not afraid to clean house or do whatever it takes to defend themselves. So 8-wing 9 is the strong, confident, but not as maybe as aggressive, more laid back. Protective of their own time, yes. Protective of their family members and their resources. Want to live quietly, though. More wants to live quietly and unobtrusively. Friendly, but always sizing people up. Strategic and watchful. Now, assertive 8s, who are naturally assertive, when they're under stress and when they're under, challenging circumstances, can look like a withdrawn 5. So 8s, when they get upset, they'll be a little bit belligerent. But let's suppose it's not working. Let's suppose maybe they don't have all their facts right. And so they're in an argument, and then they realize that they didn't know enough to be able to defend themselves and their point of view. Then what does an 8 do? They withdraw like a 5. And they say, peace out, I'm done, I'm not having this conversation anymore. And you'll see them walk out. They'll storm out, they'll leave, and they'll go to their cave, so to speak, and either lick their wounds or reload, so to speak, their weapon, reload themselves with new information or better information, and like a 5, withdraw, and like a 5, investigate. Okay? Like a 5 under stress, 8s will like turn into an investigator. Like, what did you mean you said we had to be there at 5? Why did you tell them that? What makes you think that I want to see? They'll start like an investigator going down a list of, tell me the facts, tell me what you said, when you said it, what the other person's, and they may be like an investigator in that they want the facts and clarification because they're getting at the truth, but it's not in just an investigative way, it's in a way to like prove their point or prove their case or defend their turf. Okay. When assertive 8s are healthy and doing well, you'll see them melt into compliant 2s, which are the helpers, the givers. Again, when they don't feel threatened, when they feel at peace and they feel like their defenses can kind of come down and they can relax a little bit, you'll see an 8 taking care of people, holding people, loving people, being open and comforting, and instead of confrontational, comforting with people. Think of the nurse that the charge nurse, of the floor, who has to like go handle every argument and tell people that they're not doing their work right. But then when the actual baby's born, the charge nurse comes in and melts and swoons over this little infant, and then turns around and tells all the other nurses, now you're going to do this and you got to do that and you need to be responsible, but then turns back to the baby and coos and caws over the baby. Okay? That's what I mean when 8s kind of like in health move to a compliant 2. All right, so what are the steps for healing for an 8? Well, let's do 10 of them. Number 1, learn to act with self-restraint. You show your true power not when you assert yourself and when you become belligerent. Your real power lies in your ability to lift other people up. You're at your best when you take charge and help people through a crisis. Okay, that's when we need leadership. And so learn to restrain yourself that not every fight is my fight. And not every fight needs a warrior in it. Some fights need negotiators. Okay? So sometimes you have to restrain yourself from your impulse to act in anger. Okay, number 2, learn to yield to others in their desires. You kind of have a desire to dominate people. I know it may not be, something that you think about. You may not feel like you're trying to dominate people, but your desire to tell everybody where you will and won't eat, or protect your calendar, or whatever, can be a sign to you that your personality has gotten in charge and not you. You may be resisting things or fighting things that would actually be good for you. Okay, back to that, where are we going to eat? Maybe you want to eat a whole pizza and somebody says, let's go to the salad bar. That might be a better choice for you, but maybe you can't let yourself go there because they're trying to tell me where I'm going to eat. So it's not a fight. Let it go. And the salad place might be a better choice for you. So learn to yield to others. Don't be afraid to let other people make some decisions. Number 3, remember that the world is not against you. I already talked about this. Now, some people in this world might be, and you deal with those people when that time is appropriate. But by and large, the everyday world we live in, the average world we live in, the average day that we live, most people are not thinking about you. They're so messed up in their own unhealth that they're so worried about how they're coming across and what people think of them that they're probably not sitting around plotting your demise. If they are, by all means, deal with that. But don't go looking for problems when there aren't problems. The world is not against you, and there are many, many, many people in your life that care about you. Let them. Let them care about you. Let them take care of you. Let them love you. Don't be afraid to let the drawbridge down or open the fort doors on sunny days when it's quiet and we don't hear any uprisings and we don't hear the drum beats coming at us. Open the fort door and let people in and out of the fort. Okay. Number 4. You want to be self-reliant and depend on no one, but the reality is you depend on a lot more people than you think about. I mean, just to get to work today, the water company, all the people that work for the water company had to get water to your house. Okay? All the people that work with electricity had to get electricity to your house. All the people that build cars had to build a car and gasoline and all that for you to get to work. So you depend on a lot of people every day, whether you realize it or not. That doesn't make you vulnerable, just the fact that you, like everybody else, need other people in your life. Your self-sufficiency is largely an illusion. This idea that all you need is you, well, what about when you have cancer? You might need a doctor, okay? So you need customers. Even if you're the big wig, the boss leader at your work, what if your employees all decide they don't care anymore? Then your whole company is going to go down the toilet no matter how powerful and strong you are. So you depend on other people. Recognize that and appreciate those people. Okay? Number 5, you overvalue power. You overvalue power. People are not attracted to you. Maybe initially they're attracted to you because of your confidence, but that's not why people love you. People don't love you because you're powerful. People love you because you are you. They may respect you and fear you because you're powerful. And it may feel great. It may feel like you're the strong one, if you demonstrate that power and people respect you. But ask yourself this: at what cost to my health? At what cost to my relationships? At what cost to my emotions is it to be this powerful? How am I hurting myself by being this powerful all the time? There's an expense to being powerful all the time. Number 6, learn to serve a higher purpose than your own self-interest. And this will help combat that lust that we were talking about earlier. If you live for yourself and always just to protect yourself, then your life is pretty meaningless. It's pretty small. Number 7, if you believe that God exists, then guess what? There's somebody more powerful than you. Somebody that you have to surrender to. And I think when an 8, if they become a Christian, that's probably what it feels like, is they've surrendered their power for His power. Like John the Baptist, who was also an 8, right? John the Baptist, what did he say? He must become greater and I must become less. And that probably is the way an 8 would describe their salvation experience. All right, number 8. You have a tendency to translate all your emotions into anger. Allow yourself to feel the full range of your emotions and don't feel compelled to act immediately on what you feel. Stop looking for someone to blame. 8s want to blame people. If we show up at the restaurant and it's closed, how come you didn't know that? How come they closed their restaurants on Monday? This is ridiculous. Why didn't you call before? Why? Sometimes there's nobody to blame. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes things don't go the way we want them to go. Looking to blame people will distance and push people away from you. It doesn't necessarily serve a helpful purpose for you. Be careful about translating all your... I know it gives you great energy, but it also has a cost on your health. Okay, and on your relationships. If you're angry all the time, it's hard to hug a porcupine. It's hard to hug a cactus. Okay, and anger pushes people away from you. Number 9, one of your greatest abilities is to create opportunities for others. Empower others, and use your power to secure them and make sure they know they're secure, and then empower and challenge others to greatness. And number 10, last thing, think of all the harm that you're capable of as an 8. You're the bull, right? So if that bull decided to get mad, and that bull decided to resist, and that bull decided to get even, just think about the equalizer that's within you, the death wish that's in you. Think about the rage that you could turn loose if you allowed yourself to act on all that. Okay? Just think about that. Then think about all the good that you're capable of doing too. Think about all the love you're capable of showing, all the safety that you could provide to those that are insecure. Think about all the good and all the love and all the kindness that you could show, and then ask yourself, which one of those 2 paths is how you want to be remembered? Which one of those 2 paths is how you want to guide your life? All right, guys. Thank you all for watching this video. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Be present to life. Show up to life. Love the people that are in your life. Till I see you next time. Thanks.